Hi, everybody. We're going to get started and try to get back on track here. So now you had the overview from the regional perspective, from the public perspective, from the private perspective, and now we're going to do the deep dive into each of the geographic locations, starting with all of the subclusters in New York City. And our first subcluster is Long Island City, and there's no one more knowledgeable about this cluster than Bill Harvey.
Thank you, Nancy, and thanks to Mitch and everybody involved in putting this together. Very, very proud to be up here and certainly talk about Long Island City. I think actually before I get into Long Island City, I'll just take kind of a step back, and I think Long Island City is a very important cluster in the development of the greater New York City ecosystem. I'm a broker, so I'm going to kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth a little bit, in that we compete. You know, I'm the building agent on InnoLabs, which is actually King Street Properties, 270,000 square foot project right in the heart of Long Island City. So we compete with the buildings in Long Island City, but we also compete with the Deerfield building and 619 West 54th Street. And eventually it'll be 125 West End Avenue. It'll be other projects. I think that it's important to kind of note that we are so early on the royal way in kind of developing this cluster, that it's not mature enough to kind of have kind of the segmentation that you might see in more established markets like San Francisco and Boston. With that having been said, let me go through this. I'm going to kind of fly through this because I want to talk about the buildings themselves. This is just a timeline that kind of speaks to the development. There's a lot of people, Nancy, Mitch, many of you in the audience that are kind of responsible for getting us to this point. I've got this deck. If anyone wants it, I can probably send it to them. So let me just get right to the buildings too. This is kind of a little bit of data. This is actually pulled right from our tenant deck. Talk a little bit about what lab tenants want, and I think that this is actually why Long Island City tends to work so well for life science, right? Zoning, right? The city came out a couple of years ago with a memorandum that spoke to zoning and spoke to use groups. You can do lab in certain commercial districts. I think the preference of tenants, though, is to do it in M districts. Because of the industrial heritage of Long Island City, large swaths of LIC are zoned for manufacturing. In addition, you've got the buildings themselves. A lot of kind of former industrial buildings that have been kind of converted to labs. InnoLabs, the building that I mentioned before, is actually a great example of that, and there are others as well. It's column spacing, it's floor loading, it's ceiling heights, it's all these things that kind of tend to work so well for lab conversions from industrial buildings. So I mentioned it before, King Street Properties, one of the largest private developers of lab space nationally. They have about 5 million square feet of space, most of it in Boston. This is actually their first project outside of that market. This is right at the intersection of almost 7 subway trains, one of the best located buildings in the city. 270,000 square feet over 6 stories. Opentrons and its PRL and Neochromosome subsidiaries have space here. We signed a deal with them earlier this year for the entire second floor. We have activity really on all 6 floors of the building. Let me flip to the next one. I should say Matt Malone, Chris Horch are, I think, in the audience. Both of them, Perkins & Will and JB&B, are associated with the InnoLabs project. Alexandria. Alexandria was actually the first company to go out to Long Island City. They have what many people still refer to as the Bindery. It's a project, it's about 180,000 square feet over 3 stories, a little bit further away from the more kind of central parts of Long Island City, but they've been very successful already doing a couple of smaller deals. I should also note that Alexandria has a development site right across the street from this one. I think that's about 150,000 square feet. So they're, surprising actually, no one. Alexandria loves the campus idea. So they're kind of really getting started on a Long Island City life science campus. And that'll be great, actually, when it gets going. Paragon Oil Building. My friend John Cahill was up here before. He's actually the agent on this building. Great location, second stop from Grand Central on the 7 train. It's about 140,000 square foot building, I think. It's triangular. It almost looks like the Flatiron Building in Manhattan. Really, really interesting. Related, the large developer here in New York is the owner of this building. Related has a lot of life science projects in Boston. So, a developer that really, really knows what it's doing. Court Square Labs. So very, very interesting. This is a project. It's a new project. I think delivery is in about a year and a half from now. Longfellow Properties is the developer of this project. It's, I think, a 7-story building, about 200,000 square feet, equidistant between kind of the Court Square and Queensboro Plaza subway station. So great location, kind of in the shadow of 1 Court Square, which is, I think, the iconic building that everybody knows in Long Island City. I should say, somewhat parenthetically, 1 Court Square is actually where Amazon was going to go before really the politicians got in the way. And we talk about Amazon and their decision to relocate to Long Island City early and often in our building presentations. And what we kind of focus on is that Amazon had an RFP. This is as part of the HQ2 process. And I think they had over 200 responses to it. And at the end of the day, they picked Long Island City. And it was really because Amazon saw its location decision as being either accretive or dilutive to its efforts to attract and retain a young, sophisticated, very well-educated workforce. And that's exactly the same demographic that the companies that we are trying to get to Long Island City like. So I think that the Amazon analogy is actually very, very relevant here. 2302 49th Avenue. This is actually the building kind of right next door to the Paragon building. It's very interesting. It's about a 600,000 square foot building with massive floor plates. So NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, is on the lower 4 floors, but they have 2 floors, each about 100,000 square feet, that the owner would like to kind of repurpose for life science. This is very, very unique space. IPG, Innovo Property Group, is kind of co-developing this with Nanfeng Life Science Real Estate out of Hong Kong. Nanfeng is also a big investor in the life science industry, meaning the companies, not so much the real estate. 2402 QPS, Queens Plaza South. This is definitely the before picture. This is a kind of co-development from King Street Properties and Botanic Properties. I think I'd get my wrist slapped if they knew that I was sharing this picture. But it's all we have for now. This is going to be an overbuild. I mentioned Matt Malone, Chris Horch. They're also going to be on this project. This is going to be a 260,000 square foot project, I think over 9 stories. It's an awesome location. And I think that this is going to be a really interesting building and a really interesting opportunity, I think especially for a lot of the hospitals. This is right as you get off the 59th Street Bridge, right across the river from Rockefeller, Weill Cornell, MSK, New York Presbyterian, HSS. So just an unbelievable location. That's really it. I wanted to kind of fly through this, Nancy, just to kind of open up the floor to any questions. So happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, and if there's anything that I kind of glossed over that we should take a deeper dive on, I'm able to do that as well.
Yeah, so Bill, thank you for that overview. I wasn't aware of a lot of those pending developments, so that's very interesting. What is the competitive advantage of Long Island City versus the other subclusters in the city?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, I'll go back to the Amazon analogy. A big part of it was price or value. I think that the value proposition in Long Island City is tremendous. I should have mentioned that the Interlabs project that we represent, it has a tax abatement. So taxes have been kind of zeroed out at the $85 asking rent that we have. Taxes, once the building is kind of fully stabilized, would be about $17 a square foot. So that's $17 a square foot that in savings that gets transferred to the tenant. So there's a big economic component of the overall value proposition. I would also say that location, right? And a lot of people don't think about it because, yes, it's an outer borough, but our project, it's a one-seat commute to all three of the major transportation hubs. We're 3 stops away, about 10 minutes from Grand Central. On the 7 train, you could take the 7 or the E train to the Port Authority. That's like 12 to 14 minutes. And then the E train obviously goes to Penn Station, like 16 to 18 minutes. And I think it's important because as New Yorkers, we don't so much think about distance as much as we do time and convenience. So for a lot of reasons, I think tenants have kind of circled Long Island City as a prime destination.
Yeah. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask of Bill? My goodness, you're a quiet bunch for our first in-person meeting.
Very comprehensive overview, I guess.
All right, well, thank you for that. That was a terrific presentation, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.